fantastic. Thank you so much, Brooke, for keeping this going on. And so we're going to have a couple of cocktails that are relatively, um, they have the basics that you should know about making cocktails. And then we have one in the middle that's kind of a big boy, kind of a little extra in terms of not just what we do with cocktails, but in terms of ingredients and in terms of its Halloweeniness. Because if you read over the the schedule of events, you're going to see that we have a zombie right in the middle of everything that hopefully does not bite everybody. And included in this, and I think Brooke started sending these out beforehand. If not, there are recipes for the cinnamon simple syrup, or you could have purchased some cinnamon syrup at a store. There is also grenadine, which I failed to include on this one, but I have included in other ones, and I can update this particular one to resend out if anybody wants the grenadine recipe, or again, you could buy that store-bought. One other thing is if there's a question about what I'm doing, or if you have a question about the cocktail or anything like that, feel free to ask while I'm making. I'm going to try to go slowly so everybody stays up and everybody stays with us. But if I start going too fast, please let me know. Sometimes I don't realize how quickly I'm going.
And I'll be monitoring the chat too. So a lot of times it's easy for me to throw a question out to Brian as well, if that's easier for you. So
right. Or if you're shy or anything like that, you can always just send a note to Brooke and she will answer the question or she will get me the note. And so with all of that being said, are we ready? All right, also a couple of small things. If you do not have a shaking tin yet, something that looks like this with a smaller metal tin and a larger metal tin, or you have something like this, which is these parts are removable and the strainer is on top. If you don't have something like this, what you can always do is get a couple of Raider up, bottoms up pint glasses and just pour things back and forth into two separate glasses. The technique is called rolling. It will help you get everything integrated and it'll make things a little bit easier. Also, if you do not have anything like this at home, this is a jigger. This is 1 ounce on this side, 1.5 ounces on this side. If you don't have a jigger at home, 1 tablespoon is half an ounce, so you can measure it out that way. Or a 1/4 cup is 2 ounces. That could also be something that will help you out. So if you have measuring cups that are a 1/4 ounce or a 1/4 cup, or you have measuring spoons with 1 tablespoon, you'll be able to measure as well. So just a couple of basics. So because I've got the spread. So if you don't have a fancy spread or if you don't have the tools that I have, you can still make all of these delicious cocktails without too much worry. So with that being said, let's get started. We will make our first cocktail called the Black Orchid. And it's going to be a little bit of a sweeter cocktail. There is a few things that are going to balance it out the sweetness, but it's also going to be a longer, taller drink, so you can enjoy it for a little bit longer. We actually have 2 long drinks and 1 kind of short dessert drink. Also, with each one of these cocktails, I have a food pairing to go with it. And usually the food pairing goes one of 2 ways. Either it is going to enhance the flavors, so the flavors are going to be in synchrony with each other, so they're going to match, or they are going to kind of provide relief. So if there's something too sweet, maybe you take a bite of some acidic food and you get a little bit of relief and it changes it up the flavors a little bit. So you can either balance food flavors or you can kind of blend them together. Either way, it's your choice. So with the Black Orchid, we are going to start off with 2 ounces of vanilla vodka. If you don't have vanilla vodka, regular vodka will do. And if you want to add maybe a capful of vanilla extract, you can do that as well. It's not going to change the color because we're going to make this a pretty dark one. So I'm going to jigger it all up. And so I now have 2 ounces of vanilla vodka or regular vodka, your choice, in this cocktail shaker. With a little bit of extra vanilla, it is going to make it a little bit sweeter, but it shouldn't change the overall flavor too much because we have other sweetening agents in it. Everybody ready? So the next ingredient we're going to add, and this is where we're going to play with a little bit of the color. The next ingredient we're going to add are 2 ounces, or sorry, 1 ounce of blue curacao. Now, blue curacao is an orange flavored liqueur. It has the same flavor profile as orange curacao. It's just tinted blue. And this is kind of a 60s/70s invention when kids didn't want to drink what their parents and grandparents were drinking, and they wanted to drink some fun, new, interesting, colorful cocktails. And so they made some blue curacao, and it just looks really cool. Plus, there was a lot of things going on with coloring and other coloring at the time. So now we have 2 ounces of the vanilla vodka, 1 ounce of blue curacao. So we have a little vanilla, a little orange. Next, we are going to put in lime juice. Now, I will fresh squeeze limes, about a 1/2 ounce of lime juice. If you have one of those little squeeze bottles full of lime juice or a little pre-made bottle of lime juice, a 1/2 ounce of lime juice will do you just right. If you're cutting and squeezing limes, 1 lime will be about 1/2 to 3/4 of an ounce of lime juice, depending on how big the lime is. Limes are small and they're stubborn and they don't like giving up their juice very much. Which, when we cut the grapefruit later to get some grapefruit juice, or if you just have regular grapefruit juice, you're going to find that is the complete opposite, because it is going to get to be a sloppy mess, because grapefruit is all about, hey, do you need more juice? I can give you more juice. And if that's not enough juice, I'll give you even more juice. So I have my lime juice squeezed, and I'm going to put a 1/2 ounce of lime juice into a cocktail. So right now, we've got 2 ounces of vanilla vodka, 1 ounce of blue curacao, a 1/2 ounce of lime juice. So you got a little bit of sweet, a little bit of sour in there. Balance it all out. Everybody caught up? We're good right now?
So they had a random question. If you don't have the vanilla vodka, what ratio of plain vodka to vanilla extract?
I would still put in the 2 ounces of vanilla, but I would use, now I use the lid. So maybe 1/2 a lid full of the vanilla extract in with everything. And one of the things about adding vanilla extract is if you like yours a little bit more vanilla-y, you can go a full cap. If you don't want as much vanilla, I would probably do maybe a 1/2 cap. Or I would say maybe if you want to do a quarter, like maybe a 1/2 teaspoon, a small ratio of it. So the next thing I'm going to add, and it's a little bit of out of order in the menu, but the next thing I'm going to add are orange bitters. There are a lot of different orange bitters on the market. I grabbed the Angostura orange bitters. Orange bitters are a classic, and it says 1 or 2 dashes. It's all going to come out a little bit differently for you. If yours doesn't come out very quickly, you might have to go 3 or 4. If yours comes out really quickly, 1 might be more than enough. So This is just a little bit of extra flavor. And this is one of the older flavors of bitters. In fact, if you want to be all history cocktail nerdy, the original martinis had a few splashes of orange bitters in them when they were originally created. So 2 ounces of your vanilla vodka, 1 ounce of your orange curacao, a half ounce of lime juice, and then a couple dashes of orange bitters. We're at right now. Next, we are going to add, depending on how strong you want it, 4 to 6 ounces of cranberry juice. I'm going to do 3 1.5 ounce jiggers, so I'm going to put in about 4.5 ounces. And there's 2 reasons we're adding this. One is the flavor. It's going to add a little bit of a tartness to the cocktail. And 2 is the color. Because when we mix this red up with the blue of the blue curacao, we should get like a dark, dark blue or a purplish color, which is where we get the idea of the black orchid. So it's a little bit sweet and it's a little bit dark. The other thing is, for those of you who enjoy, again, the food and history nerdery, vanilla comes from orchids. And
I did not know that.
It's the second most expensive spice in the world after saffron, because true vanilla still has to be pollinated by hand.
So is that why my mother-in-law is obsessed with vanilla she gets in Mexico and like brings it back and stuff? Like,
Yes. Well, there's the Mexican vanilla, there's French vanilla, and there's like like French vanilla is more of the flavor of vanilla ice cream and the scent of vanilla ice cream. Most true vanilla is still made, I believe, in Mexico, but yeah, I mean, 95% of the vanilla in the world is made chemically. And you can kind of see that when you go to buy, a bottle of vanilla extract versus maybe vanilla beans, if you've ever noticed that contrast, because that's expensive. So we've got 4 to 6 ounces of cranberry juice, a couple dashes of orange bitters, blue curacao, 1 ounce of blue curacao, 2 ounces of vanilla vodka, and lime juice. Are we all caught up? Are we all ready to go? Even the people that just showed up. Welcome. Everybody ready? To add a little bit of ice to your cocktail shaker. And you have to add the ice because if you don't add the ice, it's not going to get cold. And we all like cold cocktails. So when you if you're doing it with this method, when you put this on top, I usually give it a little bit of a pat to make sure it doesn't come off, because I have had the fortune or misfortune of shaking one of these hard enough and not paying attention and having this come popping off. And it made the arc and the liquid looks absolutely gorgeous for a second or two, and then I wear it, and I don't want to wear it. So I'm going to shake this for a little bit. I'd say about 10 seconds, or until the tin gets cold in your hand. You'll get a little froth. And if you're using a glass, something else that might happen is the glass might expand in the tin, and either you have to tap it gently on the edge of a table to break the seal, or kind of squeeze the tin around where the glass is to break the seal. One of the 2 things need to happen. You created a vacuum. Now we put a strainer on top of it, and if you don't have a strainer, a Hawthorne strainer, another way to do it is take the top lid and the tin, leave a little bit of a crack between the 2, just a really baby tiny little crack between the 2, and then strain it into the glass. Don't miss it as much as I just did. So now you have this nice dark purple color. Everybody get that? Something in the vicinity of this look. Nice dark purplish color. Now the last thing we're going to do, now one thing about garnishes is garnishes are always there to enhance the enjoyment of the cocktail, either through visual presentation or through enhancing flavors. In this case, it's going to be to enhance the visual presentation because we've got a nice purple cocktail, a dark colored cocktail. And if you're any kind of color theorist, the opposite of purple on the color wheel is yellow. So we're going to do a little bit of a lemon zest. You're going to take your peeler and you're just going to peel off a little bit of the lemon zest, being careful not to cut yourself. Again, experience. If you have any cuts on your hands and you're squeezing juices, especially citrus juices, you will find those cuts. Then you express the zest. So squeeze the zest over top of the cocktail. Add the zest to the side. Have it fall off when you move it. And now you have a cocktail. Any questions?
Looks like people are enjoying.
Okay. Cheers,
Cindy
everyone.
said it's very pretty.
What do we think?
Rob says great flavor.
Good, I'm glad.
Joyce says lovely with the slider.
I'm glad she brought that up. This is the part I always forget. Now, I picked the French onion sliders for a couple of reasons. You've got the sweetness of a caramelized onion, you've got the beefiness, and you've got a lot of the richness coming through. And I think that's going to go nicely with the vanilla and some of the other flavors that are coming out in this cocktail.
Now, if someone's happens to be more blue than purple, did they miss something or?
No. When you're going for the color of a cocktail, it's not an exact science. So maybe you poured a little bit less cranberry juice than one other person did. Maybe you poured in a little bit more blue curacao. There's a lot of different reasons. Maybe the blue curacao you purchased, mine is Mr. Boston blue curacao. Maybe you purchased a brand of blue curacao. It's a little richer in blue color. So there's a lot of different reasons that when you're playing with colors in cocktails, those could be off a little bit. So if yours is a little bit more blue than purple, it's not a big deal. It's still going to be a tasty beverage.
All right, I think everyone's ready for the next one.
Okay. I'm going to grab a couple things real quick while you're still enjoying the rest of that. I'll be right back.
So real quick, I'm going to ask you all, I put in the chat, we have 2 more contracted with them. We'll obviously hopefully do more than that if y'all want to keep tuning in and coming. And I haven't even asked him this yet, but would you want another holiday edition of the cocktails, like holiday entertaining? I know we did that once already, but I feel like a lot of people actually really enjoyed it. That would be sometime between Thanksgiving and Christmas. And then the other thing I was thinking about, since we are hoping, fingers crossed, that Rowdy Graw will be back and in person in February, that maybe, I don't know, Brian, could you do some Taste of New Orleans cocktails for our Rowdy Graw?
Oh yeah, I already have a couple in mind. New Orleans, in terms of cocktails and cocktail history, New Orleans is up there in terms of cocktails that were created there. Like if you've heard of a Sazerac, if you've heard of a hurricane, there's a lot of cocktails that were created in New Orleans because for a while it was sort of the Wild West, and sort of isolated from the rest of the world or the rest of the United States.
And Joyce says she's bought so much alcohol and stuff for these that she needs to keep taking classes so she can drink it all. Um,
That's what I've got in my basement is I've got so much liquor.
and Cheryl says, holiday or not, we just want to keep learning. So, okay. Well, then I think I'm definitely going to do one that will probably be early February, late January. That's New Orleans. So I'll get with Brian and work on that. And then somebody else suggested New Year's. That could be fun too. So let me marinate on that, or feel free to put it in the chat or email me if you have any other ideas for the next couple.
And we could do one well, we'll think about it. I have ideas. All right. So you've been here for a while. A few of you have asked in previous sessions, let's do something more complicated. Let's do something a little bit bigger. Ta-da! We're doing something a little bit bigger. So we're going to do a very, very traditional tiki cocktail called a zombie. And when you go to look through traditional tiki cocktails, a zombie is one that's going to pop up on almost every list. You're going to see zombies, you're going to see Mai Tais, you're going to see scorpions, paper planes. There's a lot of them that stick out. And the zombie is complex, yet not terribly complex. There's a lot to it. There's a lot of ingredients. And so when you looked at this and you looked through the zombie, you might have thought to yourself, Brian, what have you done? Why do we have so many different ingredients? And the answer to that is, well, tiki drinks always have a lot of ingredients. It masks a little bit of the punch of the rum, and you'll feel this one. So let's start with the juices. So we're going to go back to 3/4 of an ounce of lime juice. And again, if you have fresh squeezed lime juice, that'll probably be about the juice of 2 limes. If you're not fresh squeezing juice, just 3/4 of an ounce of lime juice. And I always fresh squeeze. The one thing I will also say is you can fresh squeeze lime juice or you can fresh squeeze juices for the next day. Most juice stays good for 24 hours. And when I mean stay good, I mean it still has the same kind of punch. Over time, the citrus will oxidize and it'll get softer and softer and softer. So it won't be as acidic. And
Hey,
so,
Brian,
yes.
if they couldn't find the velvet falernum, what should they
Falernum?
use? Falernum, sorry. Would spiced rum be better in that case?
Yeah, spice rum should be fine. And it's a 1/2 ounce. So as long as there's a little bit of that flavor profile in it, we should be okay. Plus, there's so much going on in this cocktail.
And is falernum syrup okay too?
Falernum syrup is perfectly fine. It just doesn't have the same liquor content. Which, if you looked ahead, there's plenty of liquor in this drink. So I did 3/4 of an ounce of lime juice. Now I'm going to butcher this grapefruit. Again, if you have grapefruit juice, whether it's pink grapefruit juice, whether it's white grapefruit juice, whether you are also going to butcher a grapefruit, you are going to need 1/4 ounce of the grapefruit juice. Now for grapefruits and larger fruits, some of them aren't going to fit neatly in your strainer if you're using a strainer that looks like this or a squeezer that looks like this. So you might have to cut it up into pieces. I'm cutting mine into 1/8, honestly, so I can get it to fit. because grapefruits are bigger boys. And I'm probably going to make a mess, and that's not going to make anybody in the house happy. So I am going to squeeze. Now with grapefruits and oranges, you are going to get plenty of juice from just one. I would say you'll probably get 4 ounces or so of juice, probably more, out of a single grapefruit. So you're gonna have.
Where did you all find the falernum?
Any answers? Falernum in the liquor store is usually with the liqueurs. So it's usually in the area where you'll find things like Jägermeister and a couple other Jägermeister and things like Campari and other liqueurs, because it does have that Caribbean feel. Plus, there's not a lot of brands. In fact, I think I have one of the best brands, and it's made out of Pittsburgh. I'll show you what it looks like. I can only think of one other brand of falernum that you could buy in the store. So now I'm going to take the 1/4 ounce of grapefruit juice I need and add it to the cocktail. Now, zombies and tiki drinks, unless you start going straight to the source, like I will go when I research, I will try to find Beach Bum Berries original zombie or Trader Vic's original zombie. Oh, I'm sorry, Beachcomber Don. Don the Beachcomber. His original zombie. So I will look for those and go with those. But there's a lot of variations to this. So if you come back and you're like, but I saw one with passion fruit in it, but I saw one with orange juice in it, I'm sure you did, and I'm sure they are perfectly good zombies. This one is one of the ones that I found that's one of the earliest versions of it. So now we're going to do a 1/4 ounce of the cinnamon simple syrup. Either you made it like I did, and I sent you the recipe, or you purchased it at a store, which is either way is perfectly fine. And then another 1/4 ounce of grenadine. Grenadine is also something you've probably purchased at the store. You can make it at home as well. Again, if so, for anybody who has been to a Raiders on the Rocks before, does anybody remember what juice grenadine is made from?
They're saying pomegranate.
Extra points to Gryffindor. It is made from pomegranate juice. To make grenadine in a very simple way, it's equal parts pomegranate juice and white sugar. And that's one of the few times I'll recommend white sugar. And then you're going to add a little bit of orange blossom water or a small, maybe a 1/4 or a 1/2 teaspoon of orange marmalade. So we have a 1/2 ounce or a 1/4 ounce of grenadine and then a 1/4 ounce of the cinnamon syrup. Now here is the Velvet Falernum. John T. Taylor's Velvet Falernum out of Barbados. Falernum flavors. So if you have the syrup, that's great. It's non-alcoholic. It's still going to give you this flavor profile, but it's going to have a lot of allspice and cinnamon and a lot of those tropical nutmeggy sort of flavors, things that you would find in Caribbean cooking. So we are going to add 1/2 ounce of Velvet Falernum. This is where it gets a little bigger. Now we're going to add 1.5 ounces of dark rum. Now, I have asterisks on all of these because if you don't have the different rums that I'm asking for, If you just want to add extra of one type of rum or extra of another type of rum, you can do so. Roughly, you're going to have 3 ounces of rum in this bad boy. So 1.5 ounces of the dark rum, 1.5 ounces of silver rum. And the difference between the two is that dark rums are usually aged. And there's 1.5 ounces of the silver rum and 1.5 ounces of the dark rum. And in the Caribbean, one thing that happens in Kentucky when things are aged is there's an expansion and contraction of the barrels because it gets hot, it gets cold, and the barrels kind of contract back and forth. And the process of aging goes a little bit slower. So in Kentucky, that's going to happen. Up in the north, that's going to happen. In the Caribbean, where it is constantly warm, that is not what happens. It is constantly warm, so the rum is constantly aging. So if you have a 3 to 5 year rum or a 12-year rum, not only are you aging it a really long time, so you're really getting a lot out of the barrel, you're also losing a lot more than you would if you were just aging it in Kentucky because you're suffering from more evaporation. The angels are taking more of their share.
Can you substitute Frangelico for the Velvet Falernum?
It'll have a slightly nuttier taste, but yes, you can. So I'm putting a little bit of ice in my glass. I don't think I'm going to be filling the glass completely, but I'm putting some ice in my glass. And then I am going to put some ice in my shaker. But before I do that, let's go through the ingredients again, just to make sure everybody has everything. It is going to be 3/4 of an ounce of lime juice, then 1/4 ounce of the grapefruit juice. So lime juice, then grapefruit juice, then 1/4 ounce each of the cinnamon simple syrup and the grenadine. You're then going to put in 1/2 ounce of velvet falernum. If you have frangelico, if you have falernum syrup, if you have spiced rum, any of those things you can use for the falernum. Then 1.5 ounces each, again, this is a big boy, of dark rum or amber rum. This one is plantation, but there's a couple local places that make it as well. Now that Silwright's is back, I always suggest Silwright's rum. And then plantation 3-star silver rum as well. 1.5 ounces of each one of those. And then we are going to do it. Does everybody have all of that in their shaking tin? I see
Looks
some
like
people,
it.
I see some people already shaking.
And hey, Brian, would this be one that you could make in a bigger batch to serve later or like in a punch bowl?
Yes. Most tiki drinks, most cocktails actually in general, you can batch up. Just think about how big a standard serving is and then multiply it by the number of servings you want. The other thing you want to do is for every cocktail you're making, so let's say you're adding 8 servings, you want to add about 1/2 ounce of water with each one of those servings for ice melt, so you can keep it cool. Because you can batch all of this, put it together, have the water in it, put it in the fridge, and it will cool on its own. And then you just have this amazing cocktail ready for any time. It's a really good party suggestion, or if you're having a lot of guests over for a game night or a cocktail party, to make a simple batch cocktail and let people pour into their own glasses. So I'm going to shake this up again for about 10 seconds or the tin gets cold.
And hey, Brian, is it possible to make sugar-free simple syrup?
Yes. I've experimented with a couple different ones. The only problem is they don't last a terribly long time. The other thing I would say is, like, let's say you're using Splenda. One thing you could do is, let's say I have 1 ounce of simple syrup. You can put an ounce of the water in, and then just a little bit of the Splenda, because I know a little Splenda goes a long way. That's the way they used to do it back in the day when they made cocktails. They wouldn't use simple syrup. They would cut off a little bit of a loaf of sugar. So they put a sugar cube in and then melt that sugar cube with water. So if you put in a little bit of Splenda and then the right amount of liquid, the right amount of water, you can also make it that way. So it's a little more sugar-free. But in terms of making a simple syrup in a large batch, what I've noticed with things like Splenda and some of the other ones is that it doesn't hold as well over time. So I shook this for some amount of time. Hopefully that was 10 seconds. Now I'm going to use my strainer this time. And there is your zombie. Now, one of the things about tiki drinks, this is another one of those garnishes where the garnish isn't to add any real flavor. It's more to add a look. Remember, tiki is all about kind of this Polynesian, Caribbean, tropical escapism. So what they would do is they would take little mint sprigs, separate them out until they look like little baby trees. And then they would use that to garnish their cocktail. So a lot of times when you're garnishing tiki drinks, you might see, yeah, it's an orange and a cherry and a sprig of mint, or it's an orange and 2 pineapple leaves. There's actually one, I think the Jungle Bird, it is an orange and a cherry and 2 pineapple leaves that make it look like there's a bird sitting on top of your cocktail. Now, this last step is absolutely optional. I don't think I'm going to do it because I still have to make another cocktail and talk at some point tonight. But if you want, if you have some overproof Ray and Nephew rum, or if you have some Blackstrap rum, you could take a little bit of it and put a little float on top of the cocktail. Now that's your own level of danger. Again, this is overproof rum, so most rum is going to sit down about 90 to 100 proof. This is a closer to 151 proof. So you're talking a little bit more punch. I am not going to add it. If you choose to add it, what you're going to want to do, actually, I'll add it. I'll add a little bit more of the dark rum just to show you what you would do. You just float a little bit on top. So you just put a little bit of, like, dribble it on top. And then zombie is ready to serve. So if everybody has their zombie, if everything is ready, if everybody is ready to go, cheers. Tiki drinks always make me so happy, and rum drinks make me so happy, but I know how much liquor is in here.
If Dylan actually wore his costume,
I'm sorry? I heard a bit of that and then it cut out.
Sorry, I was just gonna say that's why I get in trouble then, because I like rum drinks.
Yeah. Tiki drinks are a lot. And so when you're making tiki drinks, that's one of the things you really need to think about is, like, I know my sister-in-law, there's a place in Cleveland called Porco. And actually there's a new tiki bar in Dayton, well, in Miamisburg. Something Voodoo. It's a Creole tiki place. It's right next door to the Watermark. But they're doing tiki cocktails. And there's a place in Cleveland I'm more familiar with called Porco. And they even kind of warn you, like, 1 or 2 drinks are going to be perfectly fine. You don't have to get crazy here. because there's 4 ounces of liquor in here. And people don't want you to think, oh, I'm totally fine, and then stumble out somewhere.
Laura said it's backwater voodoo.
Backwater voodoo, thank you. I just ran into the owner over the weekend and we were talking about it. And for the life of me, I remember the voodoo part, and it's right next to the watermark, and they share a patio and all sorts of other details, but I'm still bad with names.
Okay, I think we're ready. Everyone's just kind of chilling, so I think we're ready to move on to the last one.
Just real quick, what do we think of the scorpion? Or, I'm sorry, the zombie.
I see a lot of thumbs up happenings.
That's a big thumbs up in the middle. In my screen, it's a big thumbs up in the middle. All right, last cocktail. Oh, I forgot. With this cocktail, we are pairing it with Jamaican jerk chicken. Because of the juices, because of the tropical taste. One other thing that I learned when you're pairing food or you're trying to pair food and drink is to pair food and drink from the same region. So rum is very Caribbean, jerk is a very Caribbean flavor. So there are 2 flavors that are going to go well together, because a lot of the flavors that you'd find in the jerk chicken, you'll probably also find in a lot of Caribbean cocktails and Caribbean syrups like the falernum.
And speaking of that, a couple of you are like, please do more drinks with the falernum. So I don't know what that would entail, but
we'll do more drinks with the falernum, and they're probably thinking, now that I have this giant bottle of falernum, what am I going to do with it? So yes, we will do more drinks. And one thing that we started off at the beginning and we kind of gotten away from, but I'm always open to it, is if there's a specific ingredient that we might have gotten before that you're like, I've got this entire bottle, what do I do with it? We can make some cocktails with it. All right, this last cocktail is dessert. So it is chocolate bliss. I think the art of the dessert cocktail isn't something that happens all the time. I am a huge fan of the dessert cocktail. Comment?
no, Vera just likes to say velvet falernum.
It's really nice to be able to say, and you're really cool when you have it and you're like, oh, well, what's this velvet falernum? So the first thing we're going to do with this cocktail, I'm gonna dump this real quick. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to get our glass ready, because this is going to have a completely different garnish. So if you have caramel or you have chocolate sauce, what you're going to do is you're going to open up the chocolate sauce or open up the caramel and just take it and drizzle a little bit of the sauce inside.
And can you use cognac instead of brandy for this one?
Yes. Now, again, since you're all here for cocktail history and nerdery as much as you are for the cocktails, cognac is a style of brandy. It's just specific to the cognac region of France. It uses specific grapes, and it can only be grown there. So if you have cognac instead of brandy, what you really have is a specific form of brandy. It's kind of like all bourbons are whiskeys, but not all whiskeys are bourbons. Or the difference, or tequila is the same way, champagne is the same way. All of those styles have geographic designations where they have to be made, or they can't be called that thing. So champagne, if you're getting a champagne from California, really you're getting a sparkling wine from California. All right, so let's make dessert. I'm going to start off with 1.5 ounces of brandy. Now, if you've been with me before, brandy is one of my favorite spirits. I think it's underrated. I think it does some really great things in cocktails, but it's one of my favorite spirits. So we're going to start off with 1.5 ounces of brandy. or cognac if you have cognac. The brandy I'm using is Copper and Kings out of Kentucky. It wins a ton of awards. It's an amazing distillery, and they actually have a music system in their basement where they age the brandy that pumps bass through the barrels to mix up the brandy a little bit more. And in fact, for a while, they had Spotify playlists of what they were playing on that specific day. So if you ever want to go, because when you think, hey, I'm going to go to Louisville, Kentucky to check out some liquor, you should check out Copper and Kings. It's in a great area of town, Butcherville. They make a little bit of everything from gin to vodka to brandy to absinthe. We're now going to do 1 ounce of Irish cream. And if you have a flavored Irish cream, like a salted caramel Irish cream or something like that, that's totally fine. I'm going with the original old school Baileys, whichever you choose. So 1 ounce of Irish cream and 1.5 ounces of brandy or cognac. Next, we're going to do 1/2 ounce of chocolate liqueur. I am using dark cream of cacao. You can use a white cream of cacao. The difference between the two is the color. Sometimes when you make a chocolate cocktail, you want it to be a lighter color. I know a lot of cocktails, like a grasshopper, they use white cream to cacao, so it keeps its green look. Whereas with this one, I want it to be chocolatey bliss, so I want it to be rich and I want it to look chocolatey, and so I'm using dark. But if you have light, it doesn't matter either way. Both of them are going to be delightful. That is the rage. I'm going to have 1/2 ounce of chocolate. Now, again, one thing I like to tell everybody when we're making these cocktails is if you want a little bit more chocolate, add a little bit more chocolate. If you don't want as much chocolate, pull back on the chocolate. These are always your cocktails. These are always your preferences. So just make sure you're making them to the way that you want. The last thing I'm going to add, well, I'm also going to add a little bit of, Oh, I thought I heard someone say something. I want to add 1/2 ounce of amaretto. Now, amaretto, does anybody know what amaretto is made from? For those of you that don't know,
Almonds?
it is almonds. So amaretto, depending on the type of amaretto, it ranges from kind of a shortbready flavor to a marzipan kind of flavor, and a lot of them have some cherry undertones to them. But amaretto is a delightful sweet cocktail ingredient. Then I'm going to add just a little bit of cream, heavy whipping cream, whatever type of cream you want. Heavy whipping cream or 1/2 ounce. And it's just going to be 1/4 ounce. And that made a thud when I poured it in, so I got the good stuff. All right, so in your shaking tin right now, you should have 1.5 ounces of brandy. You should have 1 ounce of Irish cream, 1/2 ounce each of chocolate liqueur and amaretto, and then 1/4 ounce, a small amount of heavy whipping cream, whipped cream, or any kind of non-dairy cream substitute. Everybody have that? I see some people shaking already. I see some things going on. So I'm going to add my ice. And I'm going to pat my shaker, and I'm going to shake this up. One other thing I note, when I do this, when I'm shaking things and I couldn't get my lid off, when I'm shaking this, another thing I do is I listen to the sound of the ice. When the sound of the ice gets a little bit higher, when it sounds like it's higher pitched clinks on the inside of the tin, I also know my cocktail is ready to go. To strain that on top of our cocktail. And now we have dessert. Try not to spill that. Everybody have their cocktail shaken, strained, ready to go? Cheers. Have some good dessert. Mm-hmm.
And someone wants to know, is buffalo bourbon cream instead of Irish cream okay?
Yes. It's still the same theory. It still has that creaminess to it. You're just going to have a little bit more of a bourbon infusion into it as opposed to just the Irish creaminess of it. That is good. And the dessert I have to go with this is a plum cobbler, and it's for a couple of reasons. One, plums are in season. Fall is plum season, and I absolutely love plums. They're one of my favorite fruits. They're one of my favorite seasonal fruits. Secondly, a cobbler is a great dessert. It's got a little bit of that sweetness, a little bit of that richness, and I think that's going to go really well with the chocolate and this creaminess. So it to me, this is kind of like adding a little bit of ice cream with your cobbler. Because the cobbler is going to, it's going to have the acidity of the plums and the fruit and things like that, and you're going to have the richness of this lovely cocktail to try. Any questions?
People are saying it's superb. This is a treat. This is so good.
And one of the things thank you very much. One of the things I want to start bringing back to when we do these is that idea of the dessert cocktail, because I really love the idea of the dessert cocktail or the nightcap or something to have at the end of the long day, or instead of reaching for ice cream or plum cobbler, you have something like this. Any other general questions or any other questions about any of the cocktails? Which one did you like the most?
Going back to the first drink, is triple sec a good substitute for the blue? I never say it right. I'm so sorry. Yeah, curacao.
Yes, but the coloration of the cocktail is going to be different, so it's not going to have that heavy purple color, but you're still going to have the same flavor profile. It'll just be a red cocktail instead of like a bluish purple cocktail.
Joyce said she'd just have a couple of these dessert cocktails and forget all the food.
And you can make a punch of these. You can really make a punch or a batch of any cocktail that you want. Just you have to measure it out in terms of how many of the cocktails that you want to make, and just measure and then multiply that out accordingly.
And Cheryl says she's too buzzed to assess all three of them. And Vera says dessert is the most important meal of the day. I concur, Vera, for sure.
And that's my fault because I put a zombie in here, and so there's a lot in a zombie.
Yes, no driving after this session, y'all. Please be safe. And
Yeah, please stay at your homes.
Okay. Well, if there isn't any other questions, I did record this. So we'll have it up on the website. We've had some staffing changes. So it's been a little hard. I'm now taking over the website. So I will do my best to try to get those up to you and to get a good full recipe cookbook, I guess. I don't know. What do you call it? Is it a cookbook? What would you call that?
A cocktail book. Yeah, it's a recipe book.
Cocktail book. Oh, someone says she can barely type. That's funny. Okay. So we're definitely gonna do the New Orleans ones. Let me think about the holiday ones, how we should do that. I think New Year's actually is a really great idea, whoever said that. And if you have, I think that's another great idea. If you've bought some stuff for these and you've got these big bottles sitting around, if you want to email me and tell me, hey, I would love to use up this whatever, I can relay that to Brian so he knows what we're doing, and we can try to start going back to some of the ingredients you may already have purchased and revamping them too. So
I'll also add to that, if you got a bottle of something from another person and you don't know what to do with it, or you've got if you have Campari, if you have Averna, if you have like Jaeger, and you want to make cocktails out of it, let me know and we can do cocktails out of those as well.
Awesome. And I was thinking the same thing, Rob. We were all really concur that we like your new beard. So
Oh, thank you. I appreciate it.
it's great.
I'm going to consensus his beard is good.
Yes, I liked it. So with that, I'll go ahead and end it up. We do have some events coming up. So if you would check out wrightstatealumni.com/events, we are going to do another alumni night at the game, December 15th, at the basketball game with 50-cent beers, since y'all like your alcohol, and different things like that. We have scheduled the beer tasting, I think February 5th. Rowdy Grawl is February 19th. So all that stuff should be coming up on our website. So I hope that you will consider joining us for some of those other events. So thank you all so much. Have a safe night. Stay home now, and enjoy your cocktails.
Thank you,
Thanks,
everybody.
Brian.
Good night.
Bye.